On today's show, our resident CFA is going to tell us what a mutual fund is, and then we're going to talk about commission mutual fund or no-load mutual fund.
It's Brian Preston, the Money Guy.
Hey, Money Guy family. It's your host, Brian Preston, co-host Mr. Bo Hansen, going beyond common sense and taking your finances to the next level. Bo, I gave you the setup. What is the definition of a mutual fund?
Yeah, so a mutual fund is an investment strategy that allows you to pool your money together with other investors to purchase a collection of stocks, bonds, or other securities that might be difficult to create on your own. So it gives you broad diversification, pool and bucket of assets without having to go out and buy each of those individual things by yourself.
So if you're a person starting out, this is the way to do it so you don't have to, because if you want to go buy the 50 best, biggest companies in the United States, or 500 for that matter.
Yeah.
Probably much easier to go open up an S&P 500 fund versus...
It's easier to go buy the cake than go get all the ingredients.
So what I want to talk about is my first mutual fund experience. Because this is, as I just told you, this is a great way for individuals to kind of break into investing.
I feel like you just put on your slippers and now we're sitting by the campfire.
Oh, man. You would think, I do this for a living now and have 20 plus years of experience. But, well, Brian was probably the best investor right out of the gates. No, I had no idea how to invest when I started. And my very first investment was sold to me.
Okay.
And I'm going to just tell you the names because I don't think telling the truth you can get in trouble for. Right out of college, I bought 2 John Hancock funds. Mm-hmm. It was the special equity fund and the regional bank fund.
Oh, really bullish on banks back then.
But listen, and look, they actually turned out well. So I'm not trashing them. But knowing what I know now, might have been a little concentrated. Not diversified. Didn't have the whole thing. And here's the other thing I like. I bought Class B shares.
Oh, those are the good ones.
Because the guy who was selling it to me showed me that, look, if you don't want to pay this front end commission, if you don't want to pay me a commission, right, no problem. We got an option for you. It's called a Class B. You don't pay any commission on the front end. What didn't get completely highlighted was that the internal expense ratio for like that regional bank fund was over 2% a year. So there was a little bit of a 2% drag. Now, fortunately, people loved them some banks back in in the 90s when I came out. So this thing overcame the 2% pretty easily, helped me buy my first engagement. Well, only engagement. I acted like I bought multiple engagement. My only engagement ring. So I just tell you that because I want you guys, I know when you come out of college or maybe you got a late start and you're in your 30s and 40s and you're starting to invest, it's overwhelming. And I even I didn't get ripped off, but I didn't buy the most effective means. So I want to help people, our Money Guy family, not make the same mistake. So
you bought a B share. When you say B or A or C, you're talking about loaded mutual funds. They have a commission attached to them. And inside the mutual fund universe, there are sort of 2 versions. There are commissioned or loaded funds, and then there are non-commissioned or no-load mutual funds out there available, right?
Yeah, and the thing I think is interesting, Bo, is I did this all back in the 90s. Things are changing since, 90s seems, well, for you, you're probably barely potty trained back then, but it's one of those things where there's lots of trends that are going on right now that I feel like we need to cover these. And I've got this cool new resource. Maybe I should, because I've noticed, here's what's interesting. Preparing for this show, I found a resource and I'm like, oh, there's the magical well where all the journalists are getting all the information on mutual funds.
Right.
And what it is it's the Investment Company Institute, ICI.
Okay.
They come out with their annual fact book. And I've realized so many articles have been based off of this annual report. I need to be using this. So a lot of this data you go here is coming right from that. But listen to this. Expenses are in complete free fall. This is a good thing. If you're an investor, you love that there's so much competition out there, as well as technology making the processes easier for companies to keep up with things, that expenses have been in free fall. So, example, equity funds in 2000, equity mutual funds, meaning stock mutual funds, in 2000, the average expense ratio was 0.99%. That's
right at 1%.
Right at 1%. 2016, that average equity fund is now 0.63%. So we've had a decline of 36% in that 16-year period. The bond funds. My note said FUDs.
I didn't know what a bond FUD was.
You didn't know what a bond FUD is?
I thought I was going to learn about something new.
So a bond fund, the 2000, it was 0.76. This is for a bond fund, which don't have great yields on them anyway with the coupons. Now it's down to 0.51. That's a 33% drop. And then here's something I thought that was interesting. It tells how telling the investment world works. What came out in this 2017 fact book was, and this number surprised me because we've got all this modernizations going on. Outside of it, retirement accounts, the percentage of mutual funds that are sold, meaning that there's an investment advisor versus a do-it-yourselfer involved, 80% are coming from people who work with investment professionals.
Huh.
So that shows me there's a lot of people we are being told to go invest by, and having somebody help us with us outside of our employer plans. And I thought that was just a very interesting thing. I want to talk about the migration of what's going on with the money that's going into loaded, if we're talking about commission versus no load mutual funds. Over the last 10 years, 10 years isn't that long, especially when you get to be my age, the loaded in mutual funds, the commission funds, have seen $1 trillion of outflows.
Oh, wow. And we're talking about these A shares, B shares, C shares, front load, back load, and ongoing
it's crazy.
load.
Backload, by the way, backload used to be an issue. I mean, one of the greatest ways I used to try to get business is when I had somebody come in that was working with a commission advisor, and I'd find out they had a whole portfolio of B shares. The B shares came around, and I'm giving way too much information, but B shares came around to compete with no loads because the commission guys were charging, on the A shares. That was the most popular, 3 to 5%. And then no loads started coming out and people were starting to move assets there. So they said, well, we got to create a product that doesn't have a front end commission. So they said, well, we'll do a B share. And the problem with B shares was at the time, the internal expense ratio was through the roof. They were just basically squeezing the balloon and taking the commission, the fee through the big kickbacks they were paying through the internal expense ratio. Well, listen to this number. And as a result, those front and back end load classes are falling. And in 2007, 27% of the mutual fund industry was those front and back ended loaded mutual funds. In 2016, it was 14%.
So it cut in half.
Yeah, I mean these things back end commission funds are going to go extinct. Meanwhile, no load funds. I just told you $1 trillion disappeared from the commission funds with outflows. No load funds had a net inflows over the last 10 years of $1.95 trillion, close to $2 trillion. And that's just amazing. They increased from 51% of mutual funds in 2007 to now there's 67% of mutual funds at the end of 2016. So there's big trends and big migrations going on where people are getting away from commissions and going to no loads. I like to talk to people, here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with working with an advisor. I mean, let's face it, this is what we do. Sure. I even worked on the commission side, so I'm not going to, I realize us non-commission people, fee only, we don't work with everybody. Right. So you have to ask yourself, here's the action steps moving forward. You need to evaluate what type of investor you are. If you're a do-it-yourselfer that has no problem doing account applications, you're a doer that feels like, hey, I know I'm going to invest. I don't need a hand holder. I think you could probably push yourself towards considering no load investing.
I think there's tons of resources out there and there's tons of tools that it's not as difficult as it probably was 20 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of stuff you can do you don't even have to do applications paper. You can do it right on the internet and use resources like Morningstar.com. If you want to know what you're paying in commissions, no loads versus, the commission funds, go to Morningstar, go to Google, go to Yahoo Finance, understand what fees that you're paying with your investments. Also, pay attention on those websites. Are you paying that commission? Are you buying that no load fund? Are you paying the commission? And then if you don't like the situation you're in, there's nothing wrong because we've heard a lot of this has changed rather rapidly over the last 5 to 10 years. There's nothing that says you can't vote with your feet. Maybe you got sold something like I did back in the 90s, but you've realized the world's evolved. Maybe I should evolve. And maybe I should work with an advisor like you guys that can not only, work with the no-load commissions, but they can work beyond and give me advice on the taxes, understanding any tax impact if I had to sell and get out of these old funds that now sound like they're outdated. That's where somebody like us. So if you want to take your relationship to the next level, we'd love to hear from you. Go to moneyguy.com, go to aboundwealth.com. We work with clients in 37 states, always looking for great new listeners that can turn into, and audience members that can turn into Money Guy family members.